Right, back with you here on the Newsfeed PM. Thanks for staying on. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres is calling for a permanent and immediate ceasefire in Gaza. This after Israel announced early stages of an intensified operation on the besieged Palestinian territory. The stepped-up campaign comes as the humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to worsen amid an Israeli blockade with one of the territory's last functioning hospitals warning it was no longer able to treat seriously wounded patients due to the shortages of supplies, and a nearby attack that damaged the premises. Joined now by international relations expert Ayesha Kajee. Ayesha, we believe now the intensified ground operation is underway. What does this mean? Of course, this also supported by the Air Force of Israel. All right, Ayesha, if you can hear us there, hopefully we've got a better connection there. I believe that the Israeli ground forces have now begun their operation on the ground, supported by airstrikes as well. What does this mean for the situation in Gaza?
Sorry, was that question directed at me? I didn't hear that.
Yes, Ayesha, that was for you.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm saying Israeli military has begun an extensive ground operation throughout the north and the south of Gaza as part of the operation they called Gideon's Chariots, plus supported by airstrikes. What does this mean now for the situation in Gaza?
Well, I think it essentially means that they're going to try and complete their campaign of genocide and ethnic cleansing. Everything we've seen up to this point, and various international multilateral bodies concur, human rights bodies concur, that what we are seeing is a genocide in Gaza, and certainly an ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. And it appears with this ground invasion that Israel is attempting to complete the job, quite frankly. According to the plans I've seen from the Israeli military, the plan is to now cordon off a very small area of Gaza and then push the remaining people out of Gaza into neighboring countries. So it's become very clear that this is a plan to essentially exterminate everybody in Gaza or move them out of there. And it appears that the rest of the world, by and large, particularly the governments of the world, don't seem to care. Yeah.
The reports are suggesting that this is a comment from Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has been quoted as saying that the Israeli forces will not enter and then exit. What does that suggest? I mean, a somewhat indefinite military occupation of Gaza?
It basically suggests that the Israeli forces mean to take over Gaza and mean to actually either exterminate or expel every single non-combatant there. They claim to be going after Hamas, but it's become increasingly clear that they are going after civilians. They are going after particularly citizen journalists and humanitarian workers, aid workers, doctors, nurses, anybody in the medical sphere, and ordinary civilians. So, they're not differentiating between people based on what they do. They're not differentiating between people based on gender or age. They are deliberately targeting children in the head and the heart. We've seen that repeatedly. So it's very clear that what they're now embarking on is essentially a plan to clean out, if you want to call it that, every single Palestinian still in Gaza.
Reports from the Netherlands are suggesting that there are some 100,000 people who are marching through the city of The Hague. What effect will that have?
It will have the effect of letting the Palestinians generally and the Gazans specifically know that they're not alone. But in terms of actual action on the ground, in terms of diplomacy, in terms of pressure on the Israeli government and its allies, including its allies in governments such as the United Kingdom, the United States, France, Germany, and the Netherlands, it appears thus far to be having very little effect, I'm sad to say.
Yeah. A letter has been sent.
And those are governments who ought to be tried, really, for their complicity in this genocide and in this ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
They are really now complicit in crimes against humanity.
A letter has been sent to Brussels for a review of the EU-Israel Association Agreement, which really is speaking to free trade. If they are serious indeed, is this something that they would need to look at least put their money where their mouth is?
If they were serious, then yes. We've seen certain members of the European Parliament, particularly the Irish members, some of the Polish members, etc., stand up on behalf of the Palestinians and ask for sanctions against Israel. Yet, those who have been colluding with the Israelis for decades seem to be unmoved. And so the European Union has not done much as it currently stands. In fact, it appears to be business as usual with Israel. If there were to be sanctions from the European Union on Israel, that would immediately place an enormous amount of pressure on Mr. Netanyahu and his government. And it would certainly have an effect. Similarly, if the Middle East rulers were to do the same, similarly, if the United States were to do the same, but nobody seems willing to do anything that affects their own bottom line, as it were, when it comes to trade and economics. And they're willing to essentially trade their morality for greed.
Now, the U.S. President envoy, Witkoff, is quoted as saying that everyone is concerned about the humanitarian condition in Gaza. What do we read into that?
It's a question of saying one thing and actually doing another, quite frankly. Concern is all very well to express, orally, verbally, but it's not being translated into action. It's not being translated into stopping the arming of Israel and the siege on Gaza, which is causing young children and babies to die of malnutrition. We've seen the skeletal images coming out of Gaza. They are eerily similar to the images that came out of the German concentration camps during World War II. And if that is not enough to stop, to place pressure on the Netanyahu government from the US and from other allies of that government, then I don't know what is. It appears that the leaders of the Western world and of the Middle East, quite frankly, have no compassion, no humanity, no empathy for those in Gaza. They may pay lip service with words like concern. But were it anywhere else in the world, were it, dare I say, a European nation that was being starved in this manner and besieged in this manner and bombarded in this manner, they would be very, very quick to act. The fact that it is not white people is why they are so lackadaisical about it.
What's happening in Qatar? What are the Israeli negotiators and I suppose the negotiators around that table at large doing? Have they exhausted every possibility for a deal?
Hamas spokespeople have said that they were willing to accept a deal weeks, even months ago, but the Israelis would not concur and their allies would not concur. There was some faith among Palestinians in the Qatari government. But given Qatar's rolling out the red carpet for the man most complicit in the Israeli crimes from outside Israel, that is Mr. Donald Trump, and the fact that they've gifted him, this 400 million jet, etc., that trust in Qatar has waned. And the Gazans are essentially saying they really have no ally left. They have the peoples of the world who are marching, as you said, in the streets of Den Haag, in the streets of Cape Town, in the streets of Paris, in the streets of many English towns, in the streets of many American and European towns. But the leaderships of those nations are just not interested. And they will be on the wrong side of history when this genocide is remembered. They will have sold their souls, all of them, whether they're black, white, brown, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or agnostic. They have sold their souls, essentially.
Ayesha, let's leave it there. Much appreciated. That was international relations expert Ayesha Kajee there on the situation developing in the Middle East.